Welcome to the Stellar Soul Show on No Barriers Radio for a very, very special edition. I am interviewing two-time Grammy nominee, vocalist, composer, arranger, fine artist, and educator, Ms. Carmen Lundy. Welcome, Carmen. How are you today?
I'm doing fine, thank you. I'm up to speak with you. Otherwise, I'd probably be shopping now or something. Getting my Christmas. I've had like 2 days to prepare for Christmas because we just got back from touring, and I turn around again and leave before right after Christmas. So I'm just in smack dab in the middle of a couple of free days, and it's great to meet you and talk with you.
Likewise, thank you for taking the time out. So let's get on with things. So, as you are aware, probably more than most people, the Grammy Awards are imminent. And it is the 65th anniversary of the Grammys. And in my research, I found something out very cool. That the very first vocalist in the category of jazz, the very first recipient of the Grammy, was one Ella Fitzgerald for the, let's have a look at my notes. It was, the Ellington Songbook. So how does it feel potentially being the recipient on this anniversary of the Grammys, knowing that the very first recipient was one of the greatest musicians to ever live?
That's so fitting that she should be the first. How does it feel? Let's say I can say to you that it's astonishing to me that it's taken 40 years plus to be recognized. And it's also kind of cool that there's two in a row that we received the Grammy nomination for my previous recording, Modern Ancestors, and now for Fade to Black. So
Modern
I don't know
what
I have maybe it's the Ancestors that have, yes, this one.
Yes,
with my artwork on the cover there.
Absolutely.
It's exciting. I'm happy to be among those artists recognized for the work we do in this specific field of vocal jazz, which has quite the arc in it, and I think I'm representing an extension of that, and I'm very proud of that.
That's one of the questions that I had for you. How does it feel sort of pushing the tradition of Black female jazz vocalists firmly into the 21st century?
This is a very, I don't know that I set out to become recognized more for the original music. I'm not certain that had anything to do with the track that I set for myself. It's exciting. And it's also sort of this, they say the pioneer at the arrows. They say that in America. I'm very, very committed to the composer part of my work. I'm committed to staying true to my art form as a jazz vocalist. And I know for a fact that your audience will come to know me in the future for my contributions as an original artist, rather than extending this qualification of the jazz vocalist, which is now seen as an artist who represents music from a previous time, or that time that we call the jazz era. And we don't tend to look at the jazz vocalist as someone who represents the now of the music, just as Ella did in her time. So it's important for the audience to understand that for as much as my earlier expression in the music very much comes from the same songs. Sometimes the arrangements may vary because that was the way to distinguish my version from Ella's version, from Sarah's version of some great American or great composition by even a non-American. I love the Jobim work. And Sarah Vaughan did a great rendering of a lot of music written by South American composers. So it's just endless what we're capable of given our personal interest, right? So
Absolutely.
I took it a step farther. I just said, how will people come to know me
Yeah.
for my contribution, not my version of the contribution of the version? So that's the part that's become the most challenging. And I think the audience has been reluctant to fully embrace that, because I'm asking you to hear something that's authentic, but it's new. The song is new.
Yes.
The style is nothing new there. I mean, jazz vocalizing is clearly recognizable when you listen, right? But I think to give
Absolutely.
you new, yeah, the music, to give you not only a fresh approach, but also to give you new music to hum along to. And I'm really enjoying that.
Do you feel, if one can use the word label, what are you most proud of? Composer, arranger, vocalist, fine artist, educator. What gives you the most pride when people, you know, proffer a label to you regarding yourself and your work?
I believe that the most important aspect of what I convey is through my voice, is to give you a healthy rendering of a story that resonates for you, that touches you, that carries you through the day. I think that's the job of a fine singer, one who upholds a certain quality in the sound, a certain integrity in the approach. And I surround myself, because I don't make records a cappella. I have
No,
good
yes,
musicians
yes.
supporting me. And I think that's another element, that component is very, very much responsible for sustaining a healthy voice through your career. And I've been very fortunate that way, to the point of where I consider myself one of the most spoiled jazz vocalists, because I just love sharing the stage with fine musicians. But I think I answered your question. I'm very, very fond of the vocalizing part
Mm,
more than anything.
yeah.
It just so happens that all those other things support what I do, but I love that I am your singer.
You are, well, you're my favorite singer ever, and I will qualify that by saying that for me, I sing jazz as well, and I write, and I do many different things creatively. But in this moment in time, I'm a fan. I'm sitting here as a fan of yours, and I just appreciate the way that you are embodying all that has all that's great that has gone by, but you're presenting it in very much a 21st century style. That's why I can respond to it, and many I think will be able to respond to it. So you have your mission accomplished, I'll say.
Oh, great, great. That's great. More
Wonderful.
work to do.
Yeah. Oh yes, absolutely. Okay, so in terms of the Grammys, okay, so we sort of touched on it earlier. Ms. Lundy, you began recording in 1985, and it's about 37 years to the now, to Fade to Black, your current album. If you know, you may not know, but if you do know, shed some light on why it's taken so long for the Recording Academy to recognize your work.
Wow, I'm always taken aback with that sort of question, because the artist is always the last one to know the answer to that
Yeah.
question. I'm always the last to know the reason for this. I'm happy that I have been able to sustain my career for all these decades and stay true to the work. Um, I don't really, I don't think that you go into this recording life understanding how things really work. So my focus so much on uh, establishing a repertoire, establishing a discography, establishing a catalog of music, establishing this continuum of the work. So I don't really focus on, okay, so let's see, what should I do to get this
Yeah.
Grammy nomination or Grammy? I don't. And the more time I spend doing this, the more I realize that there are so many other support systems involved. You have record labels.
Yes.
You have people at record labels who have their own agenda, their own objective.
Yes.
There's certain patterns that have been established when an artist wins, if you win American Idol or some fancy
Yes.
television entertainment show, then you're probably going to have that machine that continues to market your name and spread the joy. And I think it's similar with record labels and contracts. But then it's like, well, what label is that? And what kind of contract do you have? And what is their investment?
Yes.
So I don't know all of the, I don't really spend a lot of time trying to sort that out for myself. And even if I did know, it doesn't necessarily guarantee anything.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, because it still comes down to the work. I don't know how much popularity has to do with Grammy recognition. There are other artists, my contemporaries, who I would say whose names are readily recognizable. They're my contemporaries, but if I said their names, you go, oh yes, of course, you know. And I have also never really had the benefit of being signed to the major labels that promote the jazz vocalist. So I'm not a Blue Note recording artist, and I never have been. I tried 3 times to get a contract with Blue Note, and each time they looked elsewhere. The same is true for of the other major labels, Verve and Columbia, and on and on, you know, on and on and on.
One moment, Carmen, Ms. Lundy, sorry. You actually approached Verve and Blue Note, and they looked the other way?
All of them, all of the major labels,
Wow.
Warner Brothers, all the major labels that had jazz divisions.
Yes.
And actually had other jazz singers on their label. Yes. And I was never successful with anything, any kind of approach to any of those major labels. I don't understand that. So to this point, my first recording was actually the final demo tape for Columbia Records. It was my final try to get a recording at Columbia, at CBS.
Right.
And as a result, Good Morning Kiss, which they ultimately passed on, became my most successful. I mean, it's incredible what happened with that, but that was an independent contract where I still own the masters to my first record.
Fantastic.
And I own the masters to most of the things I've done. But the very first, that was actually a demo tape with The Lamp is Low and Perfect Stranger and all those great songs. That was my demo tape for CBS, and we ended up licensing to a label called Black Hawk, which is in Palo Alto, California. And I had never heard of Palo Alto, California. I didn't know anything about California when we first released that. So we had a lot of success with that. And then I think I did something for a Canadian label. So the British Commonwealth provided me with 2 albums at Just in Time, but that's another independent label. And in between that, I tried like heck to sign with all the others I mentioned. Blue Note, I tried Blue Note 3 times. I was passed on by Warner Brothers, by Verve, RCA, every label that had a jazz division. They all said no thanks. So this created more of a challenge and took me on a path that I never veered from other work. No. I never veered from a steady stream of performance life and working toward my goal. It's just one of those things. I'll never understand it. I can't explain it to you, but I'm very proud of that Elizabeth Uwe at Afrasia Productions. We've done almost a dozen projects now.
Yes.
Under the label. We released our first in 2005, which is the Live at the Madrid Theater, the Jazz and the New Songbook, which was a statement unto itself. Jazz and the New Songbook was a statement unto itself, 20 songs at that time. And my God, that's already 2005, I mean, to think about it.
Yes.
So my catalog of compositions is nearly 200. And I think what sustained me is this opportunity to bring new music. And there's something, we started out by saying there's something that the audience wants to associate with being a jazz singer.
Yes.
And that that's important. It's really important because there's no way you're going to make a career if you can't sing those songs. Some of them are difficult. They're beautiful. And we
Absolutely.
make them sound easy, but
Yes.
they're challenging.
Yeah.
I mean, you can make a
They're
career.
called standards for a reason, right?
Absolutely. And you can most definitely make a career just with that body of music,
Yes.
okay?
Yes.
But I think what happened for me in this time in the 80s, 90s, and moving into the 21st century is there was such we had already established such a fine representation. So for someone to come along and not do that or find another way, to express that was not something really being embraced or something that they thought really was all that essential or important. And perhaps they still do. But you can't focus on that because that's not why we do it. I do this for the audience, the world audience. I do this for the listener, not for the record company executive who thinks he's got the track on the newest, hottest thing in jazz,
Yeah.
So I think it's important for me to say, if you're really considering this, go for it fully as yourself and let everyone else kind of, they'll come along and they'll find their way to you, but you cannot focus so much on why haven't they signed me, or why don't they like what that's just not the space to you don't want to take up when you're pursuing this is high end. There's nothing elitist about it.
No.
It just requires a great deal of yourself engaged in the music and the art form, which with all of its beautiful challenges and rewards.
Yeah.
So you have to know that that's really why we do it.
Excellent. So interesting. So we can add the title of businesswoman to your list of accomplishments. So tell me, how did you and Elizabeth Uy, how did that partnership come together? That business relationship?
Oh, I think what happened was Elizabeth Uy has 30 plus years in production, the production end of music.
Right.
And in production music, and just all things related to recording music and other genres as well as jazz. And around the time of my 50th year,
right,
here on Earth, I began to look back.
Right.
And looking back was easier to do than looking forward at that time.
Okay.
I think because now I can actually see the breadth of the accomplishment in the work.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think I'm also a collector of beautiful art and and instruments. So I collect musical instruments, and I've always been interested in visual arts. So I think one afternoon I went to a lunch and parked my car just in front of an art exhibit, which I didn't expect to be there. And the art exhibit was in the lobby of a theater.
Right.
And I didn't know that was a theater. So I go into the lobby to look at the artwork, and I discover there's this theater. And I'm thinking, oh, this is, whoa. And so immediately asked for, well, who's the curator, la, la, la. And they allowed me to go in and take a look at the theater. Right. And I still have a photograph of Elizabeth standing in this theater. There's no one in it. There's not one light on. And she's standing there with her arms like this crossed, and she's looking in. I can see what she's thinking. Oh, we have to do a concert here. We have to do a concert here. So I thought, oh, okay, this is not too far from home. And it's got everything we need to just make a performance, because most of my life and my work has been in a club, restaurant, people eating, people drinking, chatting away, smoking. I'm from that time too, right? So the idea of being on a concert stage is like awesome.
Right.
So we looked at each other and we thought, okay, how do we make this work? So I said, I know what, I just turned 50. And how about if I do a retrospective?
Right.
And how about if I consider some of the artists that I began with, that out of my Miami years, because I did 7 full years of performance life while I got through the University of Miami music program. I
Excellent.
was singing every night from 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. And I did that
Wow.
for 7 years. So I thought, let me find a couple of 3 musicians that mark that time. And then let me find, there's a symbol, let me find a few musicians from my New York days. And let me find musicians from my Los Angeles time. And let's put them all on the bandstand together. Let's make a concert.
Wow.
So that's what happened. We made this concert with a retrospective of my Miami years, my New York years, and to my present day Los Angeles at that time. And we brought them all together.
Right.
And it's called Live at the Madrid Jazz and New Songbook. And you've got, so we've got 2 or 3 drummers playing simultaneously with 2 or 3 bassists. And that was where Robert Glasper was introduced to everyone.
Yes, Robert Glasper. Really happy for him and the turnaround in his career. Wow.
Yes. So Robert was the youngest member of that time. Yes. I brought in Steve Turay and Bobby Watson and Mark Shim. And then we had Victor Lewis and Mark and Smitty Smith and Nathan East and my brother Curtis Lundy and Kenny Davis, Myra Casales on percussion. We had the Los Angeles String Quartet. And we just made this concert. So what we did was, Elizabeth had the smarts to videotape it and record it. Right. And that's what began Afrasia Productions. Released that product. And that's the start of this. So interestingly enough, I never really thought about pursuing record contracts after that. I was just happy to be free to be able to produce and work at this new idea. And we just never stopped. And I'm so happy that it's very easy as women in this business to have something thwart that effort. It's very easy to not receive the kind of support that you would expect that comes along with all of that. So I think we've accomplished a great deal. 2 people.
Yes.
And we've got 2 Grammy nominations in a row. Now, it took us another 12 years or more. But all of it has to do with having a vision, being a little fearless, not talking yourself out of things so quickly, and not worrying so much about how we're going to afford this and how we're going to pay for this. You know, there are a lot of things that you can allow to interrupt your creative process or, your goals, right? But there's something beautiful about not succumbing to those fears, right?
Yes.
And to just follow through.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. So you've sort of answered the question already so beautifully well, but if we can be a bit more specific. So how in your time has the status of women in the recording industry changed?
It's improving all the time. I don't know where the changes are necessarily. They're not immediately recognizable to me, but there's more visibility. There's more inclusion. I think there's more consideration for the female artist. I mean, for heaven's sake, if I drop the needle right now on something, can you tell me if it's female or bass, on bass, or a man on bass? You can't know music is a sound. It's a gorgeous thing. And it's the one place where you can't go, oh, that's definitely a lady on the piano. It's silly, right?
Yeah.
But I think that we have an industry and we're in a time still where the patriarchy has dominated the culture. And we are beginning to realize the contributions of women far exceed this time, and now it's catching up. So I think that we're in a good time to find more of a place for alongside all that's representing our music as women. It should not be as difficult as it is. I don't think it should be as hard to just get your foot in the door or be recognized for the work. But those are things that are slowly changing with examples like Elizabeth Uy, with Jana Herzog, who began the Motema label.
Right.
Who's responsible for Greg Porter's
absolutely. Yes, his early releases.
Recognition. There are a lot, there are a lot of, yes, there are also a lot of concert promoters who are women. We have Ruth Price, who is very well known in the Los Angeles, Southern California area for promoting the jazz music for at least the last 35 years or more, 40 years or more.
Wow.
You have, Darlene Chan, who oversees a lot of the jazz festivals. She worked with George Wein for many years. So you've had this woman who has been representing the best of the best for decades now too. So we're here.
Yes.
And when the names I mentioned, you are just a few, but I see that it's getting harder and harder to ignore us. It's becoming more, it's like, why waste the energy trying to keep us from having the same, and maybe perhaps
Yeah.
we are as an instrument in moving things forward. The fact that we're part of it and we're partners in this experience is good for everyone.
Absolutely. On my radio show, I've been very, very careful to mention that whenever I play an Aretha Franklin song, I'm careful to point out she was a fantastic pianist and songwriter, as well as everything else. And I'm not sure why it is when we are, seeing women up there on the stage, that doesn't occur to a lot of people.
Wow. Well, it's the Aretha's her most successful recordings, the very most successful ones. She's on piano.
Exactly.
That's her.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, Nina Simone. There
Yes.
isn't a Nina Simone album that you could think of that she's not at the piano.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Jerry
Yeah.
Allen, Patrice Russian. It's endless, really. To really call the names. So I was just saying this the other day. I believe the most important part of our life is our childhood and
Yes.
how we develop the information, the things that we're introduced to as young people have so much to do with how the future evolves, right? So the young artist, the young person who's already aware of art form, of instruments, and not just buttons that you push that make, synthesized instruments believable.
Yeah.
We're not talking about push button music here.
No.
Okay. We're not talking about having access to computers that can give us, a myriad of recorded samples of something that we can now fuse into our own concepts and make tons of people happy and make a lot of people rich. We're not talking about that.
No.
We're talking about understanding the relationship to the human spirit and the human condition with all that's affordable and accessible to us through the sound of music and the instruments that are provided. So when a child understands that it takes this and this to play an instrument, it takes your heart and it takes some facility somewhere in your body to render music. And when and the same when you take a pencil and you apply it to paper and you make a line to render some beautiful artwork. Okay. When children understand that this is the process that leads to somebody creating some little recorded sample that you can make a record from.
Yeah.
When the young person understands that everyone benefits more so, I think. So I'm very much aware and feels very strongly about parents making their children and those teachers who are teaching young children aware of the value of your self-worth that comes through learning and experiencing any art form, because it allows you to learn more about yourself and the world around you and how things work.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you touched upon one's formative years. So Ms. Lundy, how did you get started? When did you realize that you had something musically to offer the world?
I was a kid, just as I was saying. I got started as a kid. I'm from a family of musicians, but not professional musicians.
Okay.
Musicians in church, musicians, who part of that family connectivity and that bonding, and the music is part of that. I'm from a family where we go to the music to solve problems.
Yes.
You know, we go to the music to lift, to identify and to become self-identified as community. So my early upbringing, and I have lots of cousins, lots of siblings, and no, we're not all musicians. I just happen to have a brother who's a great bassist, Curtis Lundy. And I have a younger sister who sings beautifully, but she chose not to make a career of it. So you see, my mother was a wonderful gospel singer. She sang with the same women for over 40 years.
Wow.
I actually made a film about that.
Yes, I'm aware of it. Yes.
Last summer.
Yes.
And so as a child, interestingly enough, every home that I've ever lived in had a musical instrument in it. Someone played it. So I grew up, my grandmother had the piano, our home had the piano, somebody played drums, someone played guitar, someone played organ, someone played saxophone. So even if it wasn't professional, we grew up that way. And then you experience as a kid, I can remember going to a juke joint. I mean, a juke joint, I don't know if you know what a juke joint is.
I know of the Quincy Jones album Q's Juke Joint, so I can kind of work out what it is.
It's just a little, it's in the woods with light that says the juke joint is here. That's all it is, really. It's a shack in the woods, deep in the woods, somewhere that somebody knows how to get to, and you go there with this sort of like, okay, it's just, but you know you're gonna have fun, and you know everybody's gonna juke, because when you juke, that's like throwing down the body to the music and just jamming. You know, that's just a great time. And I can remember going to things like that, and I can remember hearing the blues. I can remember hearing an awesome blues guitar as a child.
Yes.
So my mother noticed that I was poking melodies out on piano when I was about 4 or 5 years old. She knew that I was poking out those songs that she was teaching, that she was learning for church the next day.
Right.
So she started me into the piano lessons. I think I was all of 5 or 6 years old when I began to take formal piano lessons. And my brother Curtis is just behind me. I was taking piano lessons from Leslie Bloss, and Curtis was taking drum lessons from her son.
Right.
So we were just, you know, little kidlets, you know, taking, you know, dance class, music, whatever, you know, my mother thought could keep us busy and interested, and we could learn along the way. But that's the earliest. And I can say that she was smart to transfer what I was learning and picking up orally, and for me to apply and understand what that was in a formal way. So I did that for most of my childhood, but I wanted to emulate my mother. So it was more fun to emulate my mother's singing than it was my aunt's piano playing. So my aunt is where I was sort of copied a lot of the gospel harmony that you hear on piano and on organ. So I was sort of copying her at the same time taking formal piano lessons. But I think the singing was because I wanted to emulate my mother.
Excellent. I think, as the late great Al Jarreau said, we as singers, we always start out trying to sound like someone, but then hopefully we develop who it is we are as a singer. Now, he's my favorite male singer, and I'm now at a point in my singing journey when I now sound like me, but the spirit of what he does is very much in how I perform. So so we have your mother to thank, do we, for your voice?
Well, for the voice, I don't know about that. I entered choral music, and it was more challenging to be an alto than a soprano for me, because sopranos, the music we sang already, we kind of knew how it goes. So, but I found there was a challenge, and because I was always watching my mother's group rehearsing, I kind of like those other the middle part, the harmony. I enjoyed singing that. So I entered choral program in middle school and continued through high school and into college, even into the choral, the chamber singers, the best of the best. It's like there's always 16 of you, 4 sopranos, 4 basses, 4 altos, 4 tenors. And that was sort of like the elite choral group. And I did that all through college as well. But I think my voice, I think I found this, I was happy doing that. I was really happy doing this sort of choral programming thing, or singing with other voices. I enjoy that. And I think it was maybe in the later years of high school when a friend in the choral class asked me to accompany her for a talent show. So I'm still playing piano, of course, but at that point, I think I began to wonder and want to render something on my own. Just so I had to find someone to play for me.
Right.
Because I didn't really want to be at the piano, Roberta Flack style or Nina Simone style. I really wanted to kind of step out onto the stage. So an accompaniment, a gentleman, Dave Roitstein, was accompanying in a way that I didn't understand, really. I didn't understand what he was doing. Because when he played the chords, they sounded richer. They had, it wasn't just 3 notes making a chord, maybe, but he had like 5 fingers making a chord.
Right.
And then he had the left hand, and that was making 2 notes, not just 1, doubling. What are you doing? And I realized this is like, this is like jazz. This is, wow, we'll do that again. How are you doing that? And what is that? How do you make that A minor? My A minor doesn't sound like that, So I really fell in love with this lush, rich harmony that he introduced me to. And that's what I went, I just made a stop and I made a right turn straight into jazz and never looked back, because it was the harmony first that turned me on to jazz. Check that out. Yeah. I knew nothing of anything else. I mean, I understood blues progressions, but that was a whole different ballgame. And from that, I discovered jazz. It was not in my home life. I didn't grow up listening to Elephant. I mean, there was that famous TV show back in the day called The Ed Sullivan Show. And I think the first Black woman I ever saw singing, other than Mahalia Jackson, at the end of Imitation of Life. I don't know if you know that film.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Okay. So I think that's the first time I ever saw a Black woman sing on any television was Mahalia Jackson. But then there's this talent variety show and all this great talent, and a lot of them happen to be Black. And I'm thinking, ooh la la, So I think I had a lot of early influence, and just I can do that too. I can do that.
Yes.
I mean, I can do that like they're doing that. So it was just when I discovered jazz, but I didn't know about Ella Fitzgerald when I discovered jazz. I learned about John Coltrane first. I learned about Miles Davis first.
Right.
I didn't know it. I didn't even know there was singing, also this art form. I did not know.
Wow.
So it's a result of the years that I was in my university program that I discovered all of this greatness. It's fantastic. I just didn't know because I was with you, Aretha Franklin. I mean, I was very much, that was the closest thing for us in terms of secular music. My mother, was like Mavis Staples and doing things like that.
Yes, yeah.
So for me, I just knew this, they were, the Staples singers kind of came into that world, and Sly and the Family Stone, and, and then you had all this serious freaking, Jimi Hendrix and all that. And wow. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for me, that was enough. Even Dionne Warwick was that.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I identified, but I had no idea. I had no idea that there was this art form sitting there saying, over here.
I mean, I agree with you 100%. We cannot take for granted that the young will find out or they know. We must try to introduce them to the higher things in life. I think it's essential because I'm surprised but not surprised, because it's the same for everybody on their journey of discovery. You can't know about certain things before you know about them. And so, as you said, the young, it's crucial. And I mean, on my show, I try to, in many ways, pull the audience up. If someone's listening to my show that doesn't know soul music and jazz, I'm not an educator, but I hope they take something from it and then maybe find some stuff out for themselves. So yes, I agree. It's so important for the young to be exposed to the good stuff. And so, wonderful. So in terms of your formative years, now, for example, Black and Blues from Code Noir, a political number, a political song composition by yourself. Now, how much did the political situation in your youth inform your journey? Were you insulated from it pretty much as a parent can, or was it in your face?
I was insulated from it.
Right.
I was insulated from it. I was unaware. My family is huge. My grandparents made 15 children, my mother being the oldest, the first to survive of the 15. Wow. My family is huge. The community is huge. My grandfather and his brother built the community I grew up in.
Right.
They were the entrepreneurs of the community. My grandfather and grandmother owned a family market where everybody shopped. My grandfather built the church that we went to every Sunday and spent most of my early years in. And my grandfather and his brother built the homes that all of their siblings and other relatives lived in. Wow. So this is what I grew up with in the most racist country, in the Western Hemisphere. Okay.
Sadly, yes.
So, yes. And I'm in the most southernmost place in the United States, Miami. Yes. You only have what south of that, West.
Yeah, and then the Bahamas beyond that. So
in the Bahamas, but and a lot of Bahamians, of course, are first generation Miamians. Yes. Okay, and a lot of Caribbean blacks, English colony, as well as French colonization and Spanish, all through Miami. Okay, 100%. But that is one of the most racist cities in the United States. It's no worse than in all the others through the South, right? Yes. So I didn't know that. Wow. I did not know that, because Miami is an international port. Yes, you had a lot of, you have the snowbirds from New York making homes in the South. You had all of the Miami Beach. You had all of the Hispanic population in the early 50s. So Miami was this wonderful example of a melting pot and an integration and what life could be if we just give each other space, right? But my family, we didn't, no one was at the dinner table on Sunday saying, well, racism is prevalent throughout, and we never got those kinds of messages. We were so busy thriving, and we were already such a self-sustained community. I'm a child of those people that made that life look the way it did for us.
Absolutely.
They never made it. They never told us that, and I would hear things, I would hear a term or something, but I never understood it. I never knew what they meant.
Right.
When they said, oh, the man says we cannot da 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 da. I don't know what that meant. No one explained it. So I don't think I became aware. I think the first time I heard that awful term that they give to people of color, I was taking a stroll in a neighborhood that was integrated.
Right.
And one of the singers in my mother's gospel group bought a home in that neighborhood. Right. And I'm taking a stroll with my friends. We were crazy for Michael Jackson back then, and the Jackson 5.
Yeah.
And I remember taking a stroll and somebody yelled this word out of the screen door, and I was like, well,
yes,
that stopped me. So then from then on, it was like, what does that mean? And what is that? And never really got an answer. So it took really most of my young life to understand that we were in the throes of a civil rights movement. Okay. But when I look back on it, that civil rights movement, and you think about the music that John Coltrane was recording then.
Yes.
Okay, you think about the juxtaposition.
Yeah.
You think about, oh, this is why this feels, oh, I understand why Nina Simone is singing about four women.
Yes.
And
Yes.
oh, I understand. So a lot of things began to, and I can remember there was an elective course in my sophomore year of high school. There was an elective course, and it was called Black History. And I took that course because it was finally,
Yes. Yeah.
this course was when I began to understand that things weren't so, comfortable, and this sheltered way that I had come into my awareness as a young person was that it was completely sheltered. So I learned slowly and clearly. So by the time I get to Black and Blues,
Yes.
on Code Noir,
Yes.
everything had become clear to me. And then when you see the video, you see I even use images that define when things came to a head in this country. So I think I wrote Black and Blues for a couple of reasons. I think I collect musical instruments, and I found some old mahogany, steel string, blues guitar. And when you hit the string, it just sounded like, it sounded like some old, like this guy behind me.
Yeah.
So I heard nothing but the blues in the guitar. And at that time, we were with Obama.
Yeah.
So I saw both sides of having a Black president.
Yeah, you live to see it. Yeah, you live to see it and live through it.
Yes, I see it, but I also didn't understand the resentment that was behind that as well.
Yeah.
So many things became clear to me. And as an artist, there's a risk in that, because we're supposed to sing love songs, right?
Well, I know what you mean. Yeah, I know what you mean.
I mean,
yeah.
But we're not supposed to do that. We're supposed to just sing of our time, really.
Yes.
But there was a risk in that. But that entire recording, Code Noir, the reason it's called Code Noir is because I had read a book called The Black Count, and it was about the person that really liberated France.
Right. Yes.
And all of the things that I learned about that in that book, about prior to the United States, prior to this new world, all of the racism, I knew nothing of that. I knew nothing. So I had learned a great deal, and I thought, well, if every time. And I had permission anyway, because it's my own record label. So it's not
Wonderful.
Like I had to get
no trying to get people out of the recording studio, the exec producer that's looking over your shoulder and when will it be ready and all this kind of
yeah. Right. So I just went for it, and I'm really glad I did, because maybe someone else is more aware because of the way that song plays out. I also grew up in my family, my father's side. Both my parents grew up on farms.
Right.
They grew up in the rural sections of Florida, and the northern farm area, the agricultural area of Florida. So I come from this backwoods kind of thing anyway. People who kind of make a better life, they move south and they, build new homes and make a new life. But their stories are fantastic and fascinating as well. So I have a responsibility to my heritage.
Yes.
I have a responsibility to uphold that which brought me here. I'm standing on shoulders so thick and deep and broad, just for you and I to have conversations like we're having now. That's a result of a lot of greatness and support and legacy that I'm just not
goosebumps right now.
Say that again.
I have goosebumps right now because very, very similarly to yours, my parents came here and were part of the Windrush generation that were invited by Her Majesty's government to come and rebuild Great Britain after the Second World War. They were formally invited here. Yet when they got here, it didn't feel like they were invited. And that's the tradition that I have come from. And I indeed stand upon their shoulders as you stand upon the direct ancestors that helped to raise and form you. So yes, and I do feel a responsibility to conduct my person in everyday life, like, and I always say this, like I was raised by a lady and a gentleman. That's important to me, and
Very
everything that
important.
goes with it, you know. So yeah, yeah, you know, I think that in the Black diaspora, I think we have a lot more in common than I think a lot of us, you know, sometimes realize.
Most definitely. And sometimes you realize that just from talking,
Yes,
when you realize how similar and
yes,
what these incredible people have endured just so that
gosh,
we
yeah,
can have a little bit more of a closer to what ideally they would hope for us, and to
yeah,
be living some of that is so important. And I want to set an example for the young people in my family, in my world, that
yes,
I've come to know and that are still growing and learning
yes,
about themselves. Their Aunt Carmen, or their, that lady showed me so many things about myself and made me realize, and that's really kind of a cool thing also. It's,
yes,
we have this professional life and we go out and we do what we do professionally, but as examples of what's possible,
yes,
these are the reasons I pursue my craft
yes.
and try to sustain a certain quality and a high level of output, so that nothing is taken for granted
No.
and that nothing of this is a given. One understands that this is about applying oneself and being true to oneself. And that's where you more likely will influence and really make a contribution to what's good in life and inspire people that there's more value in doing something good in life.
I mean, 100%. I mean, I've been lucky to visit St. Peter's in Rome, and there's a copy of the
Mhm.
David. It's a massive, a great big thing. And it just occurred to me as you were talking, that could not have been created from a sense of superficiality. Michelangelo had to have meant to create that. Do you know what I mean? That's not an accident. It can't be. There's got to be
No.
at least an intention in there for such great art to exist. So, yeah, absolutely. And it occurred to me as you were saying, and I find that in creating whatever I'm creating, the intention is often all important. Okay, what do I hope will happen if this art is perceived by other people, wherever it might be? And I think that
Mm.
underpins a lot of what the greats that have come before us have done. It's not by accident.
Oh no. And we, believe it or not, we're that too. We just don't see ourselves not because we're here now living it.
Yeah.
But what what is this music that I do, that we do? How will that be perceived 50 years from now?
Yes. Yes.
What's this going to be to someone 100 years from now? Okay? Because that great singer named Billie Holiday
Yes. Yeah.
in the 1930s,
Yes.
okay, we're almost 100. We're like screeching
Yes.
to a halt now to into the 2030s. Okay,
Yeah.
so what what point is mine? What is my legacy
Yeah.
as it connects to her?
Yes.
And whatever I'm doing has to, whoever that is 100 years from now, will have to look back and point to a Carmen Lundy, a Billie Holiday, a Sarah Vaughan. So
Yeah.
I'm in the stream of that. It doesn't start here. It doesn't end here. I just
Yes.
want to uphold that level of artistry and rendering something that the integrity is not to be denied, it's to be celebrated
Yes.
and sustained. So I now understand that. But when I'm starting out in my career, I just want to prove that I can sing. I just want to
Yes.
prove that
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
can do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's different now. There's the objectives change along the way. Your goals, your whatever
Yeah.
that skill set,
Mm.
all those things shift. And to look up, to have this conversation with you, to look up and find myself here at this stage in my life is a sense of accomplishment, great accomplishment, but not necessarily fulfilled. Now, does a Grammy make the difference? And is the Grammy the end all be all? That's not why I did this. That's not why I do what I do. It's wonderful to be for attention to be given to the work and to the this one body of work, this one body of tunes. The first time I've done anything, made a record where all the songs are interconnected. If one song is connected to the other, is connected to the other, and that's this body of work, Fade to Black. But I don't know that it's great because someone hears what I'm saying in Fade to Black. Someone actually hears what I'm saying. That's great. But if it's how much will this change? The Grammy recognition, I think, has more to do with how the popular world will view me. How those people that don't listen to jazz will go, oh, you got a Grammy for that? Oh, then you must be good at what you do, right?
Yeah.
So in that way, I think I can appreciate that, because if I'm bringing more people into this art form by my little, offering, then great. Yeah. But the only thing that I would wish that the Grammy would do for me is that from here on out, Rando, that wherever I go in the world, I travel first class.
Yeah. I was thinking that. Yeah. But suddenly everything is upgraded somewhat. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Made me laugh.
That's
No,
it.
yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where you mentioned labels, and for those of you listening who don't know, there is a world of difference, as we're aware of, a recording studio that costs £1,000 an hour than jamming in your basement and and pressing play on an 8-track. There's a world of difference and so many degrees in between of how the industry has worked and works even now. So for you to be an independent businesswoman along with Elizabeth Uwe to reach this stage, I don't want to use the word miraculous because there's nothing miraculous about the quality of what you do, but I think it's a great testament to pushing ahead, persevering, believing in what you're producing, and not allowing the legacy that's come before to intimidate. I think a lot of people can be intimidated by that.
Absolutely. And I know for a fact that I could have made a career simply just following that track. I was already on that track. Yeah. And I could have easily done that. And I sometimes, where was I? The other day, we had a concert. I was back east at a concert in Harlem, playing the music from Fade to Black. And then we left there. We went to Old Lyme, Connecticut, right, and New England. And I was listening at brunch, and there was like a little jazz trio. And they were playing like stuff from Charlie Brown, da 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 da. They were playing all this great. I heard songs like "Where or When." I heard songs, just all these songs that I remember singing. And I could hear my own arrangements of them. And I said, wow. I mean, these songs are beautiful. And would I ever go back and maybe just do some of my favorite standards and make a record, sing some of the things, and I really thought about it. These are such beautiful songs, and I can see how easily I could have just been happy to do that. I didn't really say, oh, one day I'm going to be this composer. I didn't do that, consciously. While I was a college student, and I went from an opera major and they allowed me to switch to a jazz major, I was thrust into these courses, you see. So I was taking maybe the traditional classical theory. I'll take, when I took the jazz courses, suddenly there was all of these other requirements that I hadn't prepared for. changing my major from classical to jazz. So there was a composition that a couple, 2 arrangement courses that were required. I had to pass them to get my diploma. So I'm taking these courses because it's necessary. But did I think, oh, well, this means that I can actually do this and compose myself? It just I never put the two together.
Right.
You see. But then I started to think about, well, Billie Holiday left us songs, great songs like God Bless the Child.
Yes, yes.
So I want to be like her. I mean, I want to sing like Sarah.
Yeah.
I want to sing like Ella. You know? But I want to be like Billie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because she gave us something that we still use to this day to help define us and set us.
Absolutely.
So, right? So I thought I want to do both of those things.
Yes.
And it was because of this introduction to these things as a prerequisite to graduating.
Yes.
That really kind of introduced me to the means to the end. You understand what I mean by that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I don't know that the composition was ever, when I was trying to record, get record deals and things.
Yeah.
It made sense to me to give them songs I had written.
Yes,
It makes sense to give them a demo of some catalog that they already had from some other singer.
Yes.
So I thought I was doing what was the smart and was the sensible. It was just the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And to be rejected was so devastating.
Of course, I can imagine.
I thought you kind of set me up, and you told me that if I studied this, learn this, get this crap, get this together, then you would reward me with blah blah blah. And you never did. You never did. So
Yeah.
So are you really all you're cracked up to be? Are you really who you say you are?
Yeah.
Is this really what this is all about? So all those questions, they're fair questions. And maybe I need to change something about my physical appearance. Maybe you like it when jazz singers look coiffed and whatever. So maybe I need to go that route and change my appearance to win this wonderful, contract that you will give me ultimately. So none of that happened. I'm just as evolved as a musician.
Yes.
Without, you see what I mean?
Yes,
because that's another thing we have to tell our audience.
Yes.
I wanted the people that I wanted to, I was going to hire this pianist, that bassist, that guitarist, that trumpeter, but I am a musician who sings.
Yes.
Okay, so my instrument is voice, but
I'm
a musician, and this is my instrument. Okay, and I have spent all of my years doing my best to convey to whomever will acknowledge that I'm indeed a musician, and a musician first. I am a lover of the music first. And yes, can I lift my voice? Something comes out that you enjoy, that you say sounds lovely, great. But it's the musician in me that carries me through.